I started going to the park because mornings were too quiet in my apartment. After the divorce, silence had a way of magnifying small things, the tick of the clock, the sigh of the refrigerator, my own thoughts wandering rooms with their shoes on. The park offered a softer kind of sound, pigeons arguing about nothing, the scrape of a skateboard on concrete, a gardener's hose unfurling like a green sentence. Mostly I went for the bench, a wooden one with paint rubbed off the armrests where countless hands had learned how to pause. The first time I noticed her, she was already sitting there, posture neat, hands inside fingerless gloves though the air was only cool, not cold. She watched the pond the way some people watch the news, alert, braced, unwilling to be surprised. I took the other end of the bench because I was raised to share, and because loneliness is easier when you don't name it. We didn't speak. Not that day, or the next. For a week we occupied the same sliver of wood and silence. I learned small things without trying. She arrived at 8:30, left at 9. She wore grey or navy or the color of weather. She folded a paper napkin into smaller and smaller squares and tucked it into her coat pocket, as if compressing a thought until it behaved. On the 8th day, a dog decided we belonged to him. He trotted up, golden and opinionated, tagged my knee with his nose, then deposited a slobbery tennis ball exactly between us as if initiating a treaty. His owner, a young man with headphones and a haircut that had opinions, too, apologized without removing either. Sorry, Cooper thinks every bench is his. He whistled. The dog refused diplomacy. The woman on the bench looked at the ball as if it had asked a difficult question. Then she picked it up, wiped it with the already weary napkin, and threw it with an arm that had known practice. Cooper exploded into motion. Nice arm, the owner said, briefly unplugged. She didn't answer. When the dog returned, she threw again, farther, precise. I could feel her body remember something as she watched the arc. On the third throw, the napkin gave up and became confetti inside her glove. When they left, she exhaled in a way that told me she had been holding that breath longer than the dog had been alive. I surprised myself by speaking first. You used to play, I said, and then wished I could borrow the napkin. Her eyes flicked to mine, quick and assessing, then returned to the pond. Pitcher, she said. High school. 1,000 years ago. My son plays second base, I said. He tells everyone it's because he likes the view. I think it's because the throw to first is honest. She smiled, small, like she was trying on the expression in a dressing room mirror. Honest, she repeated. The word lingered between us like a warm cup. Do you watch all his games? As many as he lets me, I said. He's 20 now, which means he loves me privately. She nodded in a way that made me think of night trains, movement masked by darkness. I had a daughter, she said, and then looked startled at her own tense, as if the sentence had escaped without instructions. Have, she corrected quickly. She lives on the other coast. We talk. It's good. The word did not stand on both feet. A gull dragged its shadow across the water like a net. We let the silence return and do the work it knows how to do. Before she left, she pressed the crumpled napkin into my hand as if returning something I'd loaned her. You should bring your son here, she said. The throw to first is honest in every park. I came back the next morning earlier than usual. She was already there, as if the bench were a job and she was a model employee. She had a paper bag with 2 coffees. She offered me one with the shy authority of a person who has already decided she will be kind even if it hurts. I don't know how you take it, she said. Grateful, I said, which made her smile again, larger this time, the kind that changes the math of a face. We were careful with facts in those first weeks, like carrying eggs up a staircase. I learned her name, Lena, and that she had taught 8th grade math for 25 years. Equations are just stories that refuse to ramble, she said once, and I've never stopped hearing it. She learned that I wrote product descriptions for a company that sold kitchenware online, a job I had taken to keep my lights on and my brain from drowning. A pot that simmers evenly, I told her, says more about hope than we admit. She laughed in the quiet way of someone who does not give her laughter away cheaply. We built a routine without agreeing to it. Mondays and Thursdays we traded coffees, Tuesdays we brought nothing and shared the air, Fridays we each brought an object that meant something and didn't explain it unless asked. She once set a small river stone on the bench between us, smooth and ordinary, the kind you pick up without meaning to and then cannot put down. From the day I quit, she said. I wanted something that wasn't a form. I brought a postcard with a picture of a lighthouse that had survived 90 winters and 2 careless restorations. I like stubborn things, I told her, and she said, me too, as if admitting to a minor crime. Spring edged closer and the park changed clothes. The trees discovered their own throats. Runners multiplied like commas. A child learned to ride a bicycle in 10 dramatic minutes and then screamed for joy for 11. Lena always noticed the same small things I did. The old man who fed the ducks halves of his sandwich and then ate the other halves with a look of apology, the jogger who ran with one hand over his heart like he was reciting a pledge he didn't trust, the woman who cried so quietly on a Tuesday that the pigeons showed delicate respect. It's a relief, Lena said once, to see proof that we're all made of water. One morning I arrived late, breathless from stairs that hadn't been steep last year. The bench was empty. I told myself nothing about that. I sat anyway, poured coffee into the air Lena should have been occupying, and waited, the kind of waiting that feels like a prayer you don't believe in. When she finally appeared, 40 minutes later, she walked carefully, like she was carrying a bowl of soup inside her chest. She sat down with both hands on the bench as if greeting it. Are you okay? I asked, in the gentle tone reserved for strangers who somehow aren't anymore. She took a long breath that sounded like a tree adjusting to wind. My daughter called, she said. She's getting married. The last word was both an announcement and a question. That's good, I said, and meant it, and also felt the edge where joy sometimes cuts. It is, she said. It will be. She folded her hands. We have not always been good at the middle part. She stared at the pond as if it could solve for X. She wants me to come early. Help with everything. Lena's mouth made the shape of a person who has been told to carry something heavy and beautiful without dropping it. What will you do? I asked, though I could already see the answer arranging itself on her face like furniture in a careful room. What I should, she said. What I want. I don't always know the difference. We talked about travel plans then, cities and airports, and the way time zones make liars of clocks. We didn't talk about the other subject that had taken the seat between us, how people who love each other can still learn to speak in different languages and then spend a decade pretending translation is a small job. The morning she left, she put a folded piece of paper on the bench. In case I miss our Thursdays, she said. I wrote you one. The envelope had no name because it didn't need one. I'll write you back, I said, and she nodded, the kind of nod people use when they're choosing to trust a bridge. I wrote the first letter that afternoon, at my kitchen table, with the window open so the neighbor's wind chimes could be my punctuation. I told her about the boy who practiced free throws alone until the light left the court, and about the woman who sold flowers on the corner and talked to the tulips like children. I told her I had worn the blue scarf she said made me look like the person I kept almost being. I told her I hoped she was sleeping. I sealed the envelope and carried it to the mailbox and felt that old kid eagerness, that precise rush of folding a part of yourself into an object and trusting strangers to deliver it. Her reply came on thin paper that smelled faintly of lemons, because she always left a slice on the counter and the paper learned. She wrote about a small apartment with a view of water and how the water made no promises but kept showing up, which was all she'd asked. She wrote about her daughter, Maya, whose laugh was bigger than the room it came from, and about the quiet between them that had thinned in places and held in others. We are better than we were last time, she wrote. We are still us. 3,000 weeks passed. Letters moved between us like migrating birds that refused to lose their way. I learned the names of her daughter's friends and how the laundromat on the corner ate socks but returned receipts with gratitude. She learned how the man in the apartment across from mine practiced his trumpet only on Wednesdays at noon and how even the mistakes got kinder with repetition. I told her that I had dreamed of sitting on the bench and waking to find her there. She told me that she had dreamed of missing my bench by one day and waking to realize she could choose not to. Summer arrived with its loud generosity. The park grew lush and opinionated. The pond wore a hat of lily pads and dragonflies practiced handwriting in the air. My son came to visit and sat on our bench with an awkwardness he tried to dress as cool. So this is the place, he said, as if inspecting a rumor. I bought us ice cream from the cart near the path and we ate in companionable silence. He was taller than me by then, but he still turned his cone to chase the drip the way he had when he was 10. You look good, Mom, he said, like a question he hoped I'd answer the right way. You too, I said, and meant it like a blessing. 6,000. Her next letter was shorter. Maya wants peonies, and the florist says the season might not cooperate. I told her seasons rarely do. We practiced dancing in the kitchen to a song we both pretended to hate. We didn't talk about the years we missed, we just moved. I will come home when the light turns honest again. Save me the bench. I tried not to count days. I failed. I pretended patience and then betrayed it by walking to the park earlier, leaving later, checking the path the way a lighthouse checks the horizon. When she finally returned in late August, the air smelled faintly of warm rain and new paper. She wore a dress the color of forgetting and carried the caution of a person trying to land a plane without instructions. I stood before she reached the bench, then sat again because I didn't trust my legs to tell the truth. You're back, I said, and realized how large the words were. I'm back, she said, and then we didn't speak for a full minute because we were busy not messing it up. She told me about the wedding, how the vows were written in thick black pen and said out loud like both hope and history, how the bride's hair forgot to stay pinned, how the music turned strangers into cousins. We were good, she said finally, and her voice placed the word gently on the table between us. We were better than good. We sat through the afternoon as the park shifted toward evening. A breeze lifted the edges of everything. I told her about my son's new job at a bookstore and the way Head called to ask me which edition of a novel to recommend to a woman who said she wanted to read something that could forgive her. Which did you choose? Lena asked. The one with the softest paper, I said. She laughed, then fell quiet. I thought a lot about us, she said. About this bench. I kept thinking how strange it is that the life we plan and the life we live can meet each other without apologizing. Do they shake hands? I asked. They sit down, she said. And they make room. When she left that evening, she touched the back of the bench with 2 fingers, the way people touch the shoulders of friends as they pass. I watched her go and felt something like relief, only kinder. A week later, the bench was empty again. I waited an hour, then 2. The next day, empty. On the 3rd morning, a young woman sat there in Lena's place, hunched over her phone, hair the color of cinnamon. I recognized her from a photograph I'd seen on lemon-scented paper. I hesitated, then Saturday. Excuse me, I said. Are you Maya? She looked up sharply. Her eyes were her mother's, only louder. Yes. I'm a friend of your mom's, I said. From here. I gestured to the bench, which seemed eager to be credited. We've been neighbors of the quiet for a while. A slow smile broke across her face. You're the bench friend, she said, as if naming a species. She talks about you like you're a place she trusts. Something in me loosened. Is she okay? She's fine, Maya said quickly, then softened. She had a scare. Chest pain. It was nothing and also not nothing. She's home now. She told me not to tell you because she didn't want to worry you, which, obviously, is not how worry works. I exhaled a week in a single breath. Thank you for telling me. She said if I saw you, I should give you this. Maya handed me a folded note with a coffee stain already trying to explain itself. She also said not to fuss. Are you a fusser? I'm a recovering one, I said. Same, she said, and then we were both laughing, which felt like being given a chair after standing too long. 9,000. Her note was short. Don't be mad at me for being mortal, it said. Save my seat. For the next 10 days I saved it like a ritual, sitting with a book I didn't read, a coffee I let go lukewarm, a patience I practiced like scales. On the 11th day she came back, slower, thinner, wrapped in a sweater that looked like it knew too much. I told you not to fuss, she said, settling carefully. I sat, I said. It's different. She nodded. It is. We did a small inventory of health and fear. She showed me the bruise on the inside of her elbow in the shape of a misplaced cloud. I told her about the phone call ID almost made to no one in particular at 3 a.m. We agreed we were both very brave and very ridiculous. Then we returned to the easier subjects: ducks, strangers, the fact that the fig cart near the East Gate had started selling cinnamon buns in the mornings, and that this was either progress or temptation. In the weeks that followed, fall did what it always does: it told the trees to rehearse their letting go. We kept meeting. Some days we said everything, some days we said nothing. We began, carefully, to talk about the lives we'd had before the bench. Not the headlines, the middle paragraphs. She told me about a marriage that lasted 22 years and ended with 2 signatures and a sadness like fog. I told her about years when I'd worked too much and seen too little of the people I loved, and had tried to fix that by cooking them elaborate meals they didn't have time to eat. We were kind to our past selves on purpose. One afternoon in late October, Lena arrived with a small envelope. Inside was a black and white photograph of a woman on a bench very much like ours, dated 1971. My mother, Lena said. Different city, same ritual. She used to sit after work and write lists of groceries in a tiny notebook. I found this when we cleared out her apartment. I like to think she had a bench friend, too. We sat with the picture between us, 2 daughters learning to read an ancestor's posture. The woman in the photo had her ankles crossed and her chin lifted like someone who could find north without asking. Do you miss her every day? I asked. I miss her in patterns, Lena said. Holidays. Tuesdays. The particular way she said my name when she was tired. I told her about my father, about how he used to knock on the kitchen table twice when a decision had been made, and how sometimes, without meaning to, I still do it. We knocked twice for him, on our bench, and let the sound stand. The first snow fell quietly while we were not expecting it. The park went colorless and then holy. We sat in coats too optimistic for the weather and decided that we would keep coming as long as the path was not glass. On the coldest mornings we held our coffee cups like excuses. One day we should bring blankets, she said. We can be a rumor people tell, the 2 women who refused to leave. In January my son moved to a different city. We loaded his second-hand couch into a rented truck and tied optimism around it with a rope that looked like borrowed courage. After he drove away, I sat on the bench and let myself be the kind of mother who stares at a pond to keep from staring at a road. Lena didn't speak for a while. Then she handed me a small packet of tissues without looking at me. I used to think the hard part was the crying, she said. But it's the swallowing. The way you become a throat. Do you ever stop being one? I asked. Sometimes, she said. When someone else hands you water. I think that was the day I understood that love can be the simple act of showing up with a cup. By spring again, we had a calendar that wasn't written down. We noticed the first crocus before the gardeners did. We named the regulars, the man with the red beanie who always sneezed exactly 3 times on the south path, the woman who stretched like a ballerina before running anyway like a person late for a train, the toddler who called every pigeon professor. We were part of the furniture in the best way, present without being decorative. One afternoon in April, Lena arrived with a suitcase. I'm going back for a month, she said, breathless with the weight of the words. Maya is considering a job in another city. She wants me there to help her think. Can you help someone think? I asked. I can help her listen to herself without interruption, she said. Which is sometimes the same thing. I felt the bench press slightly into my thighs, like a friend's hand. I'll write, I said. And I'll write back, she said. Don't let the ducks forget us. She left the next morning. The park did its best to be ordinary in her absence, but everything tilted by a degree I could feel. I kept the routine: coffee, bench, letters, but the air had a gap where her sentences usually stood. In her notes she wrote about hotel rooms that smelled like other people's soap and about the way a person can feel homesick for a bench. We walked by a harbor yesterday, she wrote. A man repaired a net slowly, as if undoing a spell. I thought of you with your blue scarf. I thought of how we mend things in public and pretend we're just doing our jobs. When she finally returned in May, we didn't say hello. Saturday. We watched a father teach a child to throw a paper airplane that only wanted to be a paper. We listened to a teenager practice a speech into his phone and start over twice. We let our quiet be full. Then, when it was ready, she said, "She's moving," and I said, "Of course she is," and we both smiled like people who had been relieved by the inevitable. "I'm proud of her," Lena said. "I'm scared. I'm a person." She laughed, wiped at her eyes with the heel of her hand. "You know when you hold a book open with one hand while you try to make tea with the other? That's what this feels like." "Then let's make tea," I said. We did. Not there, not then, but that weekend. For the first time, Lena came to my apartment. She took her shoes off without asking. I put water on. We sat at my small table, the one that had held more bills than dinners in the last 2 years, and we drank tea like it was a plan. She looked at the photos on my shelf, the framed lighthouse postcard I'd finally given a home, the timid plant I was teaching to believe in sunlight. "You live here," she said, not as a question, but as a relief. "I do now," I said. Summer came again with its rehearsed abundance, and we let it. We went to the park most days, some days we didn't. We learned to send each other pictures of strangers' dogs with captions that read like parable titles. We learned that joy repeats itself on purpose. We learned that people leave and also arrive, and that benches can be bridges. I don't know when I started telling people I'm meeting a friend instead of him going to the park. I only know that one morning, when I said the first thing and heard it out loud, the word friend fit like a coat that had finally been tailored. One evening in late August, we stayed until the lamps came on and the pond turned to ink. The air had that brassy, backstage smell summer gets when it's taking its bow. Lena told me the story of the first time she had ever felt wholly seen, how a teacher had said her name during roll call and then added, quietly, "I'm glad you're here." She said she'd been chasing that sentence ever since. "I think that's why I taught," she said. To say it to other people on purpose. "Me too," I said, surprising myself. Only my version was writing descriptions of ordinary things like they mattered. I looked at my hands. Maybe we've both been trying to give people back to themselves. We didn't talk about the future. We let the night do that while we were busy. When we finally stood, she touched my shoulder the way you test a doorknob gently before you open it all the way. "See you Thursday?" she asked. "See you Thursday," I said, and meant it like a promise I knew how to keep. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story touched you even a little, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because maybe next time my story won't show up in your search, and I'd really love for us to meet again.